Hello and welcome to week 10 of PUBH 612. Today we will discuss planning the intervention effect evaluations. This is chapter 11 in your text. The learning objectives for this week are to review outcome documentation, assessment, and evaluation, to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of using different levels of measurement, to also review important factors to consider when designing the effects evaluation. When planning an evaluation, the first step is to decide which questions the effect evaluation should answer. The effect theory, logic model, and outcome objectives are all planning tools which can help form the basis for decisions about the focus and purpose of an intervention evaluation. The typical reason for doing an evaluation is to determine the effect of the program on program recipients. But you may be doing an evaluation for the funders or stakeholders of a program or for other research purposes. Evaluations that attempt to answer causal questions are the most difficult type of evaluation to perform, but it also provides the richest information for understanding the validity of the effect theory. Evaluations should be useful, feasible, ethical, and accurate. In order to be useful, relevant data must be collected, and this may not be as easy as it seems. Your textbook provides a good true story of a school board not allowing evaluators into schools and prohibiting them from answering evaluation questions about whether a substance abuse prevention program actually changed the behaviors of the students. It's also possible that more than one answer is possible, and evaluations that are flexible and inclusive may be more likely to reveal subtle differences between participants, and therefore multiple answers might arise. The right evaluation question should provide needed information for decision makers. Whether or not they use the information is another story, but ultimately it should be usable and provide relevant feedback on the intervention design. An evaluation of the effect of the intervention should document the effect of the program in terms of reaching the outcome and impact objectives. An outcome documentation evaluation asks the question, to what extent was the program's outcome objective met? While an outcome assessment evaluation seeks to answer the question, to what extent is any noticeable change or difference in participants related to having received the program? And lastly, the most difficult question to answer is the evaluation question. Were the changes or differences due to participants having received the program and nothing else? Answering this question will require an outcome evaluation because we're trying to detect changes solely due to the program data collection. And sampling must be very rigorous and similar to that conducted in a clinical trial. Figure 11.2, which is shown here, is a diagram of the net effects to which measures need to be sensitive. Net effects are those only attributable to the program, while total change is due to the effects of the program as well as history, maturation, secular trends, and other endogenous changes that we cannot measure or account for. Endogenous factors are also called confounders by epidemiologists. Endogeneity is the term that is used predominantly by economists, but I want to make sure that you're clear that these are the same fundamental ideas, that there are outside things which are causing the change that we're not considering or able to measure. The idea is to conduct a rigorous evaluation which will be able to minimize the inclusion of confounding factors so that we can only look at the effects of the intervention on participants. Here are the three theories which make up the program effect theory. The first is the causal theory, which explains the relationships among existing factors, the main causal factors of the relationship between the health outcome and the exposure, as well as moderators and mediators of the relationship. We also have the intervention theory, which specifies how the programmatic interventions change the main causal or moderating or mediating factors of the health problem. And then we have the impact theory, which explains how immediate outcomes become long-term impacts. And at a minimum, the causal factors and health outcomes which were specified in the theories need to be measured. The y variable is the dependent variable. This is the outcome of interest. It can be a health or behavioral characteristic that is assessed, and it's the what that the question is trying to answer. It's important to choose the most important outcome objective to measure and not to try to measure too many outcome objectives. This can be called a fishing expedition. You're going to measure everything under the sun and hope that something is changed by your intervention. Typically, your dependent variables will be from one of more than 6 health and well-being domains, which are listed here. The X variables are your independent variables because they don't depend on your outcome. It's important to review the published literature and to start by measuring known causal factors. The program effect theory can also help to identify variables for inclusion. Independent variables may be measured before and or after a program, as well as in participants and or in controls. This is a design decision made based on the resources available and the level of the rigor required for the evaluation. As we discussed in week 4, moderating and mediating variables can influence the effectiveness of your intervention. Mediating variables are intervening variables, which is necessary for the relationship between the two other variables to exist, while moderating variables will affect the strength or direction of your relationship. Including moderating and mediating variables in your evaluation facilitates understanding which factors influence the effectiveness of your intervention. Here are some other measurement considerations. First, you need to make sure that your unit of observation matches the level of the program. So if your intervention is at the individual level, your measurement should also be collected at the individual level. Another measurement consideration is the level of measurement. Nominal variables are the easiest. These include things like yes, no, absent or present, or a name. Yes-no variables are called dichotomous, while variables that have several categories, like race for instance, are categorical. Ordinal variables indicate the order or sequence or rank of information. A Likert scale is an example of an ordinal variable. And then there are interval variables, and they are the most complex and rich type of information. An example of this would be continuous data, such as weight or blood sugar levels. The time frame that you're evaluating should also be based on the theory of the intervention. And you should consider things like what is the earliest time at which the intervention effects will be found, the time when the maximum effect will be found, and the rate of change that you expect to see over time. Other considerations are if you need baseline or pre-intervention data, and lastly, you need to consider the sensitivity of the measures. Measure sensitivity is the extent to which the difference among or within individuals can be detected. No matter how well you plan and design your intervention, there will be some threats to data quality, such as missing data, problems with reliability, and validity. Missing data is a common problem as people don't always answer every question on every survey, or some people won't come back for a follow-up visit, and therefore their data is missing from that time point. Reliability is the extent to which the data are free of errors or multiple indicators of a common phenomenon coinciding. This can happen when the tool you're using to collect the data is flawed. For example, a scale that is 2 pounds heavy today and 5 pounds heavy tomorrow isn't reliable. Cronbach's alpha coefficient is a statistical test that can be used to measure the reliability of your instrument. Other sources of data errors are individual variability, such as how I rate my mood today may vary from tomorrow. Inter-rater agreement, which is the degree to which different members of the evaluation team agree, is another area for concern. And lastly, the quality of the data which are entered into the software system is important. Data need to be entered accurately or the information won't be reliable. The validity of a measure is the degree to which the tool captures what it says it measures, and is another threat to data quality. In addition to considerations about how you're going to collect quality data on your program, there are some other more broad considerations such as the evaluation budget, standards, ethics, and stakeholders' interests. As we discussed previously, the budget should cost between 10 and 20% of the implementation budget, and it should meet the standards which are outlined by the Joint Committee on Standards for Educational Evaluation, which include the evaluation should meet the practical needs of the users, the evaluation should be feasible economically and politically or diplomatically, the stakeholders should be able to trust the evaluation and trust that it's scientifically and ethically sound. And the evaluation should be described with enough information so that others can review it and evaluate its credibility. Ethical considerations can affect both program eligibility and also procedures for an evaluation. One example would be how informed consent is obtained by participants. You also need to consider who your stakeholders are and their interests. One benefit of involving stakeholders in your evaluation is that expectations can be managed and addressed and ensure that the information that you're capturing will be useful to stakeholders. Here is a table of different elements of an evaluation and scientific and programmatic considerations. Both are important and can influence the design and implementation of the effect evaluations. In summary, the key takeaways for this week are that planners need to be flexible so that the evaluation can adapt to the realities as they are encountered. In real life, things always don't go to plan, and evaluations need to be flexible to roll with those changes. Also, developing the right evaluation questions is an important step, and this week we reviewed some criteria that can help you determine if the evaluation questions that you've come up with are appropriate. Also, while evaluations and research have different purposes and audiences, their methods and designs are very similar. In evaluation, you need to pay attention to variable selection, measurement, the reliability and validity, and threats to data quality, just as you would when you were designing a research project. Lastly, here are some internet resources which you can review. Also, please make sure to check out Blackboard for any other additional materials this week. Thanks so much.